What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today we're going over 5 wide receivers I think have league-winning upside this season. First up, we have Jameson Williams, comes off the board in the mid-5th round of redraft leagues as like a low-end wide receiver 2 to a high-end wide receiver 3. JMO certainly has not had the start to his career that we were expecting, but I feel like that's a pretty big part of what is holding back his ADP. Basically misses his entire rookie season coming off the torn ACL. He was then suspended to start his sophomore season, so he never really just earned the trust of the coaching staff early on, never really had time to develop in their system. So heading into last year, he was 23 years old. He'd run 261 routes in his career. That's a little bit less than Ricky Pearsall ran last season. I mean, think about that for a second. Imagine this season, right? This year, Ricky Pearsall goes out there, he posts, 1,062 yards, 8 touchdowns through 15 games. Then he's traded to the Lions. Dan Campbell's out there saying they're going to lean on him. He's going to have a huge season. Where do you think he gets drafted in fantasy? Is it as a high-end wide receiver 3? Of course not. He'd definitely be going earlier than that. So we have a 24-year-old wide receiver who was drafted 12th overall on the most explosive offense in the NFL, a team that has 10 dome games this season, 3 in the fantasy playoffs, who's coming off 1,062 yards, 8 touchdowns through 15 games, has 0 competition as the team's wide receiver 2, meaning there is no one behind him challenging him as that wide receiver 2. Has a coach that virtually never lies to us about player usage, saying they expect to lean on him this season. He's going to have a huge season. Everything is pointing towards an even better 2025 for Jameson Williams. And yet, we just had a year where he just finished 20th in points per game. Again, likely going to improve on those numbers, but you can get him outside the top 25 wide receivers in all formats. I don't know. I can easily see a world where he just takes another step as a wide receiver, develops a little bit more at 24 years old, and maybe the Lions lose more than 2 games this season. Maybe they're forced to throw the ball a little bit more often. It could easily be an outcome where they lose, 4 or 5 games this year. Variance flows in the other direction, and they're forced to really throw the ball late in games instead of run the ball late every single week. You're not going to want to go up against Jameson Williams. I can tell you right now, over the last month and a half of the season, when the Lions close their season with 6 consecutive dome games, you are not going to want to go up against him. Home versus the Giants, home versus the Packers, home versus the Cowboys, at the Rams, home versus the Steelers, and at the Vikings championship weekend. Those are the most important weeks in fantasy, and JMO is going to have an insane weekly ceiling in every single one of those matchups. Easily could be a league winner at a 5th round ADP. Next up, we have Jaylen Waddle, comes off the board in the mid-6th round in redraft leagues as a mid to low end wide receiver 3. And that leaves a lot of room for value. Something I always think about when trying to determine ceiling is okay, who's a mid-round wide receiver that I could see being drafted in round 2 next season? And if the answer is clear to me, if I could be oh yeah, I could easily see that happening, well, then the upside is obvious. They can be a league winner this season. If I have to kind of squint and I'm well, I guess this could occur and then maybe they get lucky and that happens, okay, maybe doesn't have a league winning ceiling, but I can 100% see that happening with Jaylen Waddle next year. First of all, he's already been a 2nd round pick in fantasy after 104 receptions, over 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns as a rookie. He was a late 2nd rounder in 2022. He was then a late 3rd rounder in both 2023 and 2024. So since his breakout rookie season, he has cost you a 2nd or a 3rd round pick in all 3 other seasons. This season, again, mid-6th round. I get that people are concerned about Tua's ability to stay healthy, but don't we think that the mid-6th round is more than enough of a downgrade for Jaylen Waddle, especially when you factor in the contingent upside as it relates to Tyreek Hill? Not only is he, the clear wide receiver 1 in any week, I would say if you did a projection and you just remove Tyreek Hill, I don't even care what the matchup is, you are probably projecting double-digit targets for Jaylen Waddle. He is likely going to be a top 5 wide receiver in those weeks. That is contingent upside that most other wide receivers do not possess. Even if the wide receiver one got injured, there is no world where a lot of wide receivers become a projection-paced top 5 wide receiver in those weeks. Jaylen Waddle does. But let's not forget that like Hill's also coming off, I'd say his worst season since being a rookie. His targets per route run, yards per target, separation score, all like fell off a cliff last season. So it's not even like, does Tyreek Hill get injured at some point? Does Tyreek Hill get traded away? It's fair to just wonder, like, do the Dolphins just like, see a continuation of what happened last year and just give Jaylen Waddle more usage? Again, not only from a trade perspective, an injury perspective, just like, what are other outcomes to where Jaylen Waddle could just be more involved? And it is just Tyreek Hill falling off. Not that he's a bad wide receiver, right? He's not going to be bad. But like, imagine that you're Mike McDaniel, right? Like, that Tyreek Hill's on the team now, but there's a very strong chance that he's gone after the season and a non-zero chance that he's moved at some point during the season. Wouldn't it be in the back of your mind, like, especially if Waddle, again, continues to be just like more efficient, yards per target, yards after the catch, yards after contact, like he was last season. If he continues to be more efficient getting the ball than Tyreek Hill, and you have those things in your back of your mind, I don't know, like, wouldn't you game plan Jaylen Waddle a little bit more in than Tyreek Hill in terms of like who's getting more of this like first read usage, who is a more important role on the offense? I don't know. Like, again, I still like the upside of Tyreek Hill. I'm not trying to bash Tyreek Hill. I still think in the 3rd round of your draft, like, he is clearly capable of over 1,500 yards, double-digit touchdowns, even at 31 years old. So I'm totally fine drafting Tyreek Hill in round 3. I think that cost still makes sense. But if you were to ask me, which has more upside to your team and which would I prefer, a 31-year-old Tyreek Hill in round 3 or a 26-year-old Jaylen Waddle in round 6, I think the value of those 2 picks clearly is shifted in Jaylen Waddle's direction. I think it's much more valuable. There's more potential upside to your team taking Waddle in the 6th round, not only just saying, okay, easier to improve on the draft capital, but also opportunity cost as well. We're in the 6th round, right? The opportunity cost is not as high as the 3rd round is. And Jaylen Waddle, again, with an injury to Tyreek Hill, with a trade to Tyreek Hill, with them just shifting more in his direction, has wide receiver 1 upside in the range of outcomes. I don't know, 6th round, that feels like a really, really good cost to me. 3rd on our list today is Odunze, coming off the board in the early 7th round, high-end wide receiver 4 by ADP. Another player that I could see being drafted in round 2 next season. Like with JMO, please do not forget how early these players were drafted. Odunze isn't some 3rd round pick that we hyped up too much last season and then busted. He was taken 9th overall and is widely regarded as a slam dunk prospect. I'm expecting a similar year 2 to what JSN had last season. JSN, coached by Shane Waldron as a rookie, 5.5 yard ADOT, 71% route share. Even in what turned out to be poor coaching last season, JSN completely turns things around, finally gets some downfield looks. Wasn't like he was their downfield wide receiver, but at least was allowed to run more than 5 yards downfield, led the team in route share, jumped from 628 yards, 4 touchdowns to 1,156 yards and 6 touchdowns. Unfortunately, the Bears made the mistake of then hiring Shane Waldron. After seeing that, what are you doing? Why are you hiring him? They hire him. Odunze suffers the same fate as JSN his rookie season. Not that they had like the same stats or anything, but like in terms of vastly underperforming the expectation, same exact thing as JSN. The Bears then win the coaching lottery though. They land former Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. So there is a 100% chance that the Bears offense looks better this season. I feel like one stat that just really sticks out in my eyes for Odunze last season was something that Scott Barrett tweeted out maybe like a week or so ago in terms of percent of open air yards deemed uncatchable. Rome Odunze was 2nd in the NFL last season at 48%. Put simply, when Odunze had at least 1 step of separation last season, which is open by NFL standards, 48% of his air yards were deemed uncatchable. That is terrible. Compared to someone like T. Higgins, Mike Evans, they were at 6% and 9% respectively. It's pretty easy to paint a picture as to why the production isn't there when 48% of the air yards, when you're open, are not even catchable. We certainly should not be painting the picture that Odunze is a bust. As per Matt Harmon over reception perception, he beat man at a 71st percentile rate, press at an 87th percentile rate. That is fantastic for rookie. He ran one route at a below average success rate. It was a route he runs least often at 2.6% of his sample. Odunze is a great wide receiver, a great prospect. He can play all three wide receiver positions, and he's involved deep downfield. He is the mold of player that is capable of producing unbelievable numbers in fantasy. He just ran into an awful situation last year where the vast majority of his targets were just, even when he was open, were not even possible to catch. Now, some of that is on Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams obviously did not perform to the expectations that we set on him last year. But when you looked at that offense and you're like, okay, they've got DJ Moore. Keenan Allen was honestly fine last season. Like, he was not a bad wide receiver. You've got a great prospect in Caleb. You've got a great prospect in Odunze. And when all of them underperform expectations, do you maybe start looking and saying, okay, did all of you end up being worse than we think? Or is maybe the person calling plays over here, person running this team, maybe not that good when we've seen this exact same thing happen in the past? And again, you also just don't want to pile on to a rookie quarterback too much, because even great prospects as rookies sometimes just don't perform that good. It's really hard to transition from college to the NFL. Like, in my opinion, it is mostly play calling. Think about the best play callers in the NFL: Shanahan, Reed, McDaniel, McVay, Monken, Ben Johnson. Like, a key characteristic of all of their offenses is that they design plays to get the ball into the hands of their best playmakers. They don't ask their guys to go out there and just command targets on their own. Sean McVay knows that Puka can do that. Puka is good enough in any offense to command targets on his own, but he becomes an efficiency cheat code when he's also schemed open. Rome Odunze proved last season he can get open. Shane Waldron never schemed him open. So a lot of it became Caleb Williams either finding him too late, finding him off rhythm, finding him when running away from defensive linemen, or never finding him at all. That all changes now with Ben Johnson, and at the cost of your fourth wide receiver in round 7. That is a pick that can win you your league, and that is a hill I am willing to die on. Fourth wide receiver that I think has league-winning upside this season is Deebo Samuel. Comes off the board in the late 7th round as a mid-range wide receiver for Deebo. Age 29 season, his first as a non-49er, signs a 1-year, $17.5 million contract with the Commanders this offseason. The deal is also virtually all guaranteed, so it puts him close to, not quite in, but close to like that Evans, Devonta Adams range in terms of deals. Better than what Kupp and Shakir got, but again, not quite to that like Adams level. It's also a 1-year deal. A lot of these guys got multi-year deals, but it's in that general range, kind of in between those two. Now, the Commanders love them some Noah Brown. They are in love with this kid, but I think that should tell us something, that he's their clear wide receiver 3. I think the fact that, Ben Sinnott seems to have like no chance at beating out a 35-year-old Zach Ertz should also tell us something about this team. Jane Daniels is an awesome quarterback and proved to be really underrated as a passer last season. So why are people scared to take Deebo, who is easily not only the second best wide receiver, the second best target earner on this offense? I see people being like, well, Daniels is a mobile quarterback, so the passing volume's not going to be there. That doesn't make any sense. The Commanders threw the ball 32 times per game last season. Over the last 4 years, the 49ers have thrown the ball 29.4, 29.5, 30, and 31.4 times per game. So trending up, but this is still a volume upgrade for Deebo, not a downgrade. And again, look at the target competition. Like, which side do you think represents more target competition? Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle, or Austin Eckler, Terry McLaurin, and Zach Ertz? And which backups do you think are like, a bigger threat to steal volume? Jawan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall, or Noah Brown and Luke McCaffrey? Like, this is a volume upgrade. It's a target competition upgrade. And let's be honest, it might be a quarterback upgrade as well. Jane Daniels had a higher adjusted completion percentage, accuracy percentage, and catchable target percentage, even as a rookie, than Brock Purdy last season. I know Deebo has had trouble staying healthy in recent years, and that is probably the vast majority of the reason as to why people will not take him early in fantasy. But he is an extremely talented player. He absolutely has league-winning upside. You can get him at the 7-8 turn as your fourth, maybe fifth wide receiver. That is crazy value. Love taking him in drafts. Final wide receiver I think has league-winning upside this season is Emeka Egbuka. Comes off the board in the early 11th round as a mid-range wide receiver 5. Now, this one isn't going to look as great right out of the gates. Mike Evans, clear wide receiver 1. Even a possibility that Jalen McMillan opens as a wide receiver 2 early on, just like, because right now we have no idea with Godwin. Is he going to be healthy early in the season? They're also going to have Egbuka kind of like developing. So like early on, I would not really expect him to have a lot of production. But when you're drafting your 5th wide receiver, potentially at this point your 6th wide receiver, you're not really thinking about the first month of the season, right? Like, you're not using them then, even if it's your 5th picked wide receiver. Unless you've got 3 starting wide receiver spots and 2 flex spots, you are not starting him early in the year. So all you should care about is who is talented, who is on a great offense, and who has a path to elite production. If you can't answer those, or you're like, well, maybe not that great of a prospect, it's a below average offense, I'm not seeing a path to elite production, but they can rack up a couple receptions per game and maybe use that at some point. Who cares? That is not something that's going to win you a league. That's not something that's moving the needle. Don't draft a player like that. I think that Egbuka is an extraordinarily talented wide receiver. I think the Bucs are obviously an elite offense, and I think there's a better chance than most people assume that he does actually contribute heavily at some point this season. Chris Godwin is awesome, but he's also 29 years old, coming off a major ankle injury. Mike Evans is awesome, but he also turns 32 in August. Jalen McMillan was really good as a rookie. I think outperformed expectations, but I don't think anyone really considers him an elite prospect. And let's be honest with ourselves. There's a pretty easy path to snaps right out of the gates for Egbuka. Like, he is one injury away by 3 different wide receivers from an every down workload on one of the best offenses in football. And even without an injury, again, the Bucs run 3 wide receiver sets at one of the highest rates in the league. So if he just simply beats out Jalen McMillan, he's already up to like a 75% snap share, which is better than most rookies will be. Even if you view some of these rookies as like a better chance to be a team's wide receiver 2, who cares? On the Bucs, like, they are going to run 3 wide receiver sets so often that all Egbuka has to do is beat out McMillan. He's going to be up there with those other wide receiver 2s in terms of snap share. And it's on the Bucs. It's on an offense going to throw the ball a ton, score a ton of touchdowns, and again, 1 injury. Evans goes down, Godwin suffers a setback, and all of a sudden, you've got the wide receiver 2 on the Bucs. The wide receiver 2 on the Bucs is capable of low-end wide receiver 1 numbers in fantasy. Like, this is a really good offense. These are really talented players. At the cost of an 11th round pick, you're crazy if you don't think that has some level of upside. So if you agree with my list, leave a like, really helps me out. And if you disagree, back it up. We're running a contest this season to see who can make the best must draft, sleeper, and fade list. It is completely free to enter. All you have to do is download my free app and set your list before week 1 on your profile page. You can set it as many times as you want, but I'm locking them when week 1 starts. That is it. And for those of you who have an Android, we are in beta testing for that right now. So if you want to join into beta testing, knowing that there will be some glitches, but if you want to join into beta testing, there are 2 links in the description. 1, submit your email. Pretty easy. Put your email in there. 2nd, once you do that, once you submit the email and once I add you, that link will just allow you to join beta testing. So follow those 2. You'll get access for Apple users. The app is already good to go. You can download that. We are, I guess, quote unquote in beta right now, but the app works. So you can use all of that. Download it from the App Store or in the description box down below. All right. That'll do it for this one. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you on Friday to go over some running back sleepers.